the CBB Central Podcast continues. Yet another coaching interview for you guys, a special edition episode of the CBB Central Podcast. Brad, I know you were excited about this. I certainly was, getting a chance to speak with UAlbany head coach Will Brown. I sat with him earlier this week.
Absolutely. I mean, Albany put 3 straight NCAA tournaments a few years ago. I think they were as high as like a 13 seed one year. Took a big unexpected hit recently with Cremo and Nichols before the 18-19 season. Both those guys going high major, relatively unexpectedly, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, last year was a step back, but they're returning. Their top 4 scorers have some transfers in the mix, so they could really push, to kind of get back in that top 3 or 4 of the league.
Yeah, I mean, they should be back, and Will's a really good coach. I've watched him, really from the moment I started watching basketball, because I grew up in the Albany area, watched Siena play, obviously, but also watched UAlbany and saw everything that he was able to do with that program on a year-in, year-out basis and really build it from the ground up. This was a program that was in its D1 infancy when he took over, had just, had to move on from a coach. He comes in as one of the younger coaches in D1 with no D1 head coaching experience, and has really gradually built this thing up to getting the NCAA tournament several times, getting them consistently up near the top of the conference. And so I think, he's still 47, but he feels like he's a lot older than that just because he's been in one place for so long. And I think Albany fans should hope that he's there for a long time more, because he's done a tremendous job and is a fun guy to chat with, as I'm sure you guys will hear in a couple of seconds. But it was really fun to chat with Will. I think he brings a lot of interesting perspectives between having lost the 2 grad transfers, as you said, to recruiting internationally in Australia, to recruiting the transfer market and recruiting JUCOs, and trying to navigate low major life with transfers up and seeding for the NCAA tournament, being in one place versus having gone and moved around the way a lot of coaches have. He's seen a lot of different stuff, and I think that lends itself to a really interesting conversation.
Absolutely. And I had no idea he was there for almost 20 years. I mean, if you had me guess how long Will Brown's been the head coach at Albany, I probably would have said 9 or 10. But to be there 20 years through multiple conference realignments, teams coming in, teams leaving, in the America East, and he's been, I think, five tournaments in the 18 years, which is, I mean, that's incredible for one big league, and then having 3 other postseason tournaments on top of that. It's been a really successful run, and I don't know if they can unseat Vermont this year at the top, but they should probably be in a postseason tournament of some sort this year.
Right, and you have to think the future's bright, just kind of looking at the roster, and we'll analyze this a little bit more towards the end of the show. But, with losing Nichols and Cremo did bring a lot of experience for those younger guys, like Cam Healy, like Adam Lulka, like Ahmad Clark, who was a junior but took a nice step forward, like Malachi D'Souza, who had some nice bright moments down the stretch. So I think it'll be really fun to watch this team build and grow. And it wasn't one of those things where losing those 2 guys really crippled the program. It was just more of a momentary step back.
Yeah, I mean, Albany was 279th in a KenPom last year, which, I mean, they're usually, I think, more in like the 150s. My KenPom subscription actually expired yesterday, so I can't look that up. But I feel like that they're usually like in that 125 to 150 range. I remember Providence playing them to open the season in, I think, 2014 or 2015, and I was very worried for that game. They were coming off the tournament bid in 2014. I think it was the start of the year in 2015. A team that ended up going 15-1 in the league. I mean, that was a tough veteran team. So I'm sure that they'll be back really quickly to that top portion of the American East.
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much before last year had won 19 or more games every year. They had went on a 7-year run of doing that, with including a few 21 seasons in there, the 3 NCAA tournament berths as well. So, Will's done a tremendous job, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this chat. So, without further ado, here's our interview with Will Brown, the head coach at the University of Albany. And we're excited to be joined today by UAlbany head coach Will Brown. Coach Brown has won close to 300 games in his 18 years as head coach for the Great Danes, has led them to 5 NCAA tournament berths, and won 19 or more games in 7 of the last 8 seasons. Coach Brown, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
First question, you didn't exactly take a traditional route through the coaching world. You've never been in D1 before you take the assistant job at Albany. After 8 games, you're the interim head coach, haven't looked back. Kind of walk me through the pathway through some of these smaller schools to get to where you are now.
Yeah, it's definitely unconventional. I was very fortunate when I graduated college to be hired by Brian Bury at the College of St. Rose, who at the time and throughout his career, in my opinion, was one of the best coaches in the country, regardless of levels. And, Brian gave me an awful lot of responsibility as a young coach. And I think I really developed over those 3 years. I had an opportunity to go down and take over a Sullivan County Community College program, as a head coach, and really get my feet wet. Was able to enjoy a little bit of success there over a 3-year period, and was asked to come up to Albany and be an assistant here for Scott Beaton at the time. And actually prior to taking the job at Albany, I had committed to going to Pitt as the operations guy for Ben Howland. Went on vacation with my wife, and while I was on vacation, the coach at Albany was blowing up my phone and trying to get me to come up to Albany and join his staff. And so I called Ben, and Ben was like, you should think about it. If you're going to be the top assistant at a Division I program, and if you have success, you'll have an opportunity to get that job. So I had Ben's blessing. So talked to my wife, and she's like, whatever you want to do. So, we decided to go take the Albany job, and I didn't expect 8 games in to get called into the athletic director's office. As a young coach, I don't think it's ever good when you get called into the AD's office. And so I had no idea what was going on. And, I was asked to take over the program on an interim basis. I was told that they would evaluate the situation during the course of the season, and just do the best job you can of getting the kids excited about playing, and get them ready to compete every night, and we'll see what happens. Usually that's a nice way to say, hey, we're going to have a national search at the end of the year, and we're going to bring in a new coach, and I get that, but I also looked at it as it's my opportunity, really to just work and be a head coach at the Division I level, and gain valuable experience that whether I was retained or not was going to bode well for me in the future. And the kids really embraced what we were doing. They believed in what I was preaching, and we had some really good wins. And the president at the time, Karen Hitchcock, and the director of athletics, Lee McElroy, decided to remove the interim tag at the end of the year and named me the head coach. And I've been here ever since. So, as you mentioned, not the normal route. I didn't come from a Power 5 coaching tree. I didn't have a godfather per se. I was very fortunate, very lucky, and I think that's one of the reasons that, to this day, this program means everything to me. I know a lot of people talk about, why don't you go after this job or that job? I was the youngest Division I head coach at the country at the time. They gave me an unbelievable opportunity that I'll never forget. And, I've just tried to run with it and do the best job I could to represent this university and the athletic department and embrace the community. And it's been a fun ride up to this point. Very fortunate, though.
Awesome. And you've been doing this for some time now at this point, all in the same league, seeing a ton of different players come through. Who's the toughest player you've ever had to game plan for, whether it be in the America East or nationally?
Wow, that's a great question. I can tell you this: in the America East, I think the two most difficult matchups where we had to prepare were Taylor Coppenrath at Vermont. He was just so talented, and he can score inside, outside. He was the America East version of Kevin McHale, in my opinion. He had so many head fakes and shot fakes, you get dizzy, watching him on film. And he was just such a good player and never said boo. He just let his game speak, and he was tremendous. And then Jose Juan Barea at Northeastern. I don't think, as good as he was at the time, I don't think anybody thought he was gonna, play in the NBA for 10 plus years. It's been fun to watch all the success he had, but he was a guy that he played so hard. He played with a chip on his shoulder, and he just made plays for 40 minutes. Those were the two toughest in conference, I would say. Nationally, the guy that really caused problems for us was Steph Curry's brother when he was at Duke. We played Duke tough in the NCAA tournament, and Seth Curry, caused problems for us. He could really shoot that basketball, and it was a tough matchup for us. Buddy Hield in the NCAA tournament with Oklahoma. I think we put so much emphasis on stopping Buddy Hield that everybody else hurt us. But those are just a few. I mean, when you've been at it, 19 years at the same school, we've played just about every program, in the country. And so we've played so many talented individuals, but those are just a few in big game situations that, were tough to prepare for.
And what in your mind is the biggest thing that's changed about the college basketball world since you started as a head coach?
Yeah, I think when I first started, everybody was playing more traditional basketball, bruising power forward, big center, more 3 out, 2 in, pounding the offensive glass. Now everybody, there's trends, with the Golden State Warriors success. Now you see a lot of small ball, a lot of 4 out, and not necessarily a power forward. It's maybe a bigger small forward playing the 4 spot, more spacing. And, I think the game has turned into more of a ball screen game from an offensive, standpoint. And, so I think that's the biggest thing, really personnel wise. You don't see too many teams playing with two true bigs or true power forward and a center, anymore. I think a lot of teams, are emphasizing spacing, 3-point shooting, and so I think the game has changed. I'm anxious to see what happens with this new 3-point line being moved back. If it changes philosophy, changes who's allowed to shoot it now, who's not allowed to shoot it. But, I think it's a good thing that the game evolves or changes and, forces you as a coach to come up with some new, fresh ideas and maybe tweak some things and make some adjustments, whether it's to your defensive schemes or offensive philosophy.
Have you done anything different with the new 3-point line this summer to prepare the team?
Well, we've shot a lot of them. We went up and we played in Canada. We played 5 exhibition games. So two things. One, we practiced with the 24-second shot clock, and we played with it in Canada. So everything we've done this summer was with the 24-second shot clock. We're trying to play faster, and we've also tried to play smaller, something that we've never done here before. When teams went small against us, we tried to make them pay. We've tried to stay big and post guys up and pound the offensive glass, but we did play quite a bit of small ball, if that's what you can call it, this summer, where we took a big wing, a 6'6" kid, slid him down to the 4 spot, only ball screen with our 5-man, really worked on spacing offensively, this summer. And we chart every shot that our guys take. So it's one of those things with the line being moved back. As you know, being a hoops junkie, there's a lot of tippy-toe three-point shooters. The guys that have to have their toes on the line, that's the extent of their range. And a lot of them, quite frankly, are marginal shooters from the old line. So now, we're giving our guys percentage numbers that they have to hit, when they're uncontested, if we're going to allow them to take them in 5-on-5 situations. Every big guy wants to shoot the three. So I'm like, okay, go on the gun, go on the shooting machine, take 2,000, all right, and chart them. Or we're going to chart every single three you take in workouts. You hit this number or you don't. It's pretty simple. So, I'm anxious because I want to see if more teams play zone, if, coaches give their guys the same freedom they did with the old line. We're fortunate because we have a strong perimeter, in my opinion, and most of the guys on the perimeter for us weren't anywhere near the 3-point line when they shot them last year anyway. So it's not going to be much of an adjustment for our key perimeter players or 3-point shooters. It's going to be those marginal guys that want to shoot it that, it's going to be an adjustment for them to take 2 steps back.
You mentioned a little bit that trip to Canada. You guys played 5 games in 5 days. I follow a lot of these international trips because, quite frankly, I have nothing better to do. I've never seen someone do that, play 5 in 5 days. What was the thought process in doing that?
Well, that's why I coach. Nobody's ever accused me of being bright. So I handled the schedule. We played 5 games in 5 days, and I probably defended our team better than anybody we played against because I might have worn them out a little bit. But, when you plan these trips, you can only do them every 4 years. And one of the things, with Canada, especially the direction that we went in Montreal and Ottawa, there's some really good college programs, and they're in mid-season form. And if you're going to go to Canada, you have to play Carleton. They're like the Duke or the Kentucky of Canada. I think they've won 16 of the last 19 Canadian national titles. So, so you want to get quality. You want to go to a place where there's plenty of sightseeing, but you also want to be cost effective. So when I initially planned it out, I'm like, okay, if we go up there on a Friday and then we play Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, come back on Friday, we'll save some money in hotels and travel. And if I had to do it all over again, we probably, would have went up on a Friday and played Saturday, Sunday, took Monday off, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then come home. But the thing it did, it served its purpose because I was committed to playing everybody. I didn't care if we won by 20, if we lost. I wanted to give everybody an opportunity. I think late in the Carleton game, we had 3 freshmen on the floor, against a team that had already beaten South Florida the week before, and the reigning national champs, an experienced team, and so it was great for us. Got to play a lot of different combinations. Like I said, we played a lot with 4 guards on the floor, which we've never done since I've been here. Played 2 point guards together. did a lot of different things defensively. We switched quite a bit, something we have not done much in the past. So the one thing we didn't do on this trip is, I see a lot of these, I'm a big hoops junkie, social media guy. I see a lot of these, programs that go away for 10 days, but they only play 3 games, but they're lifting, they're practicing, they're having team meals, they're doing film sessions. For me, everything was about off the court. We did not do any film sessions, scouting reports. An hour before the Carlton game, I looked at the box score from the Carlton Valpo game and the Carlton South Florida game, and I'm like, hey, you know, point guard for Carlton, probably the best university player in the Canadian system. This is what he does. This guy, this is what he does, or this is what he did against South Florida and Valpo. And we're going to see we're going to see back screen, ball screen action. No film. Not. This was about all the sightseeing that we did, the time we spend together off the court, players getting to see coaches in a different light, coaches getting to see players in a different light, enjoying the time together. I mean, we went to Mount Royal Park in Montreal, and we get to the waterfront, and I see all these rowboats, and you can rent rowboats. So I'm like, you know what? All right, let's go. 3 guys to a boat. I'll grab a boat too, and let's do some rowboat racing. Let's make sure nobody crashes and nobody falls in the water. And we spent an hour just racing rowboats. To me, that was just as important as playing Carlton or Ottawa, whoever we played. So. It's great. I mean, it's great that the NCAA allows us to do this every 4 years. Montreal's 3 hours from Albany, and but you have to be careful. I did not want our guys thinking at any point, all right, coach is in mid-season form. We're getting ready to play Stony Brook today is what it feels like. I wanted these guys to be relaxed. Every morning they woke up and they went to my director of basketball operations room, Greg Steyer. He handed them their per diem for the day for meals, and guys went off and ate together. They ate where they wanted to eat. If we played at 7 o'clock, I was like, hey, be back at the hotel, but no later than 5. And each day we also had something scheduled. Like when we went to Ottawa, we had a guided tour of the Senate and Parliament. When we were in Montreal, we had a guided tour of Notre Dame Basilica Church, which was unbelievable. Celine Dion got married there. We did all these different sightseeing excursions that, that's what it's all about. And for us, I know a lot of coaches are so consumed with the basketball piece with these trips. We were more consumed with, spending time with our guys off the court. And that's why I think it was really beneficial for us.
You and your staff have recruited a number of Australian players over the years, guys like Peter Hooley and Sam Rowley in the past, and now you've got 3 on the roster right now. How did that pipeline come to be? Because so many schools are recruiting over there now, but it seems like you guys were in early over there.
Yeah, we were very fortunate. My former assistant, Jeremy Friel, had a prior relationship, with a guy in Australia, and honestly, when I hired Jeremy here, he started working that connection, and Luke Devlin was our first Aussie, and he made the all-rookie team in the America East, had a lot of success right off the get-go. And the one thing I learned in particular with our Aussies is they're our best recruiters, unless it's an Andrew Bogut, Patty Mills type guy. Those kids are more concerned about the education, and if there's other Aussies at the school, it's about comfort, it's about fit. So we got Luke Devlin, and then he helped us recruit Peter Hooley and Sam Rowley and Mike Rowley, and the pipeline just developed. And when we got in there, the recruitment of Aussies wasn't too hectic, wasn't too crazy. Now it's ridiculous. Everybody recruits Australia now, and they should. There's great coaching there. There's talented kids. They're tough kids. with our Aussies, if it's a Monday and I say I need something done by Friday, it's done on Monday. They're great students, very respectful, a pleasure to coach. And yeah, the reason why we keep going back is because there's good players there. There's no language barrier, but they're just high character kids. They're fun to be around. I was at one of my former players' wedding last week, Blake Metcalf. It was in Rochester, New York. Luke Devlin jumps on a plane from Sydney, Australia, flies to the wedding. At the wedding is Sam Rowley, who's working in New York City now. Sam's getting married, next year. He just got engaged. Peter Hooley just got engaged, married next year. They're having American weddings and Australian weddings. So, I can commit to the American weddings right now. My wife is anxious to commit to the Aussie weddings, but that's an awful lot of travel right there. So, but like I said, it started with my assistant, Jeremy Friel. Since Jeremy left, Josh Pelletier, who's a local guy, played at LaSalle in Troy and at the College of St. Rose, does a great job for me. He's taken over, the Aussie recruitment, and we've got 3 players in our program right now from Australia. I mean, Cameron Healy, in my opinion, obviously there's some bias here, is as good as any shooter in the country, and I think he proved that as a freshman. Adam Lucas started for us as a freshman and had a really good freshman year. He's going to be an all-conference caliber player moving forward. And then we started Brent Hank, 6'10" kid, massive human being who was really good for us defensively. So we actually started 3 Aussie freshmen this past year, and we're going to continue to recruit Australia. We can't have 13 Aussies on our roster, but there's no reason why we can't have 3, 4, 5. Just because I think they're what we pride ourselves on. High character guys that value in education and that are also good players who are good teammates.
And you guys were so young last year. You talked about the 3 freshmen Australians who were starting, but you also at one point last year were starting 5 freshmen. That's not something that's common. That's not something easy, I would imagine, for a coach. But what did that teach you about your group that you can use going into this season?
Yeah, prior to last season, going into last season, we expected at the end of the 17-18 season, we expected to be picked 1 in the league or 1A and 1B with Vermont, and we lost 2 talented individuals to grad transfer. So then we had to reassess where we were at. And I made a commitment early on to start 4 freshmen. And then by conference play, we were starting 5 freshmen. So our young guys gained valuable experience, which I think really bodes well for the future of our program. Patience from a coaching standpoint. I think for someone like myself who is very impatient in everything that I do, not just coaching. My wife will tell you I'm as impatient as a person as you'll find. And so it tested my patience, but it also helped me grow and develop as a coach. And this was a fun group to coach because I watched the progress that this young group made. And I thought late in the year, we were playing really good basketball outside of Vermont. I thought we were playing as well as anybody in our league. And heading into the conference tournament, it was pretty interesting. UMBC had their bye the last week of the regular season, and I think they had a great opportunity to rest, and I think they were really fresh when going into our game in the conference tournament, and they played really well. I thought going into that game we were playing really well, and I think the physicality of a conference tournament game, a new season where everybody is 0-0 and fighting for that one NCAA tournament berth, I think that was a new experience for this young group, and I think we learned quite a bit bit from it. We got better from it, and I think it motivated our guys. Spring workouts, summer workouts, where I think our guys are really excited about the upcoming season. Now, we will not start 5 sophomores this year. We added some talented transfers that are eligible immediately. That we're excited about. We got some good young players that we've added as well. So I think in our league this year, Vermont's going to be the favorite because they're good, but they have something that nobody else has in our league, and his name is Anthony Lamb. And, but outside of them, I think we're going to be right there, and we're going to challenge them and everybody else, and I think we're going to be good this year, and we're going to be really good moving forward the next few years. But I think our guys realize now what it takes, how hard you have to work, no days off, how consistent you have to be, and I mean this. I said this in at the end of the last game, UMBC conference tournament in the press conference. This was the most fun I've had in a long time, coaching, because we were young, we were naive, we were eager to learn, and our guys, they played their butts off. They wanted to make their coach happy. They wanted to make the coaching staff happy, and they embraced what we were teaching and preaching, and it was fun to watch them evolve, to develop, and now we have to take the next step, and I think we will.
All right, last one for you, Coach. You tweet a lot about your sons. Can either of them beat you in one-on-one right now?
Oh, no shot. No shot. My older guy, I was playing him one-on-one 2 years ago, and I tore my meniscus in the driveway. And what he was doing, I'm old and I'm out of shape. He was going the old North Carolina 4 corners on me. He was dribbling all over the place and trying to wear me out. And so what I do now with him is we put a limit on dribbles. We play like 2 dribble or 3 dribble one-on-one because that's more my speed. But he's a big, strong kid. So I'm probably a year away from never playing him again because I cannot allow my older guy to beat me. I'll never hear the end of it. Now, my little guy, my wife and I planned really well. We have a 17-year-old and a 9-year-old. So, again, I told you I wasn't very smart in the beginning of this interview. So we have an 8-year gap between boys. The little one's got a ways to go, but he loves the game. And, but all kidding aside, we have a lot of fun with it. My older guy's gonna play in college somewhere. He's going through the process right now, and he loves the game. And it's hard for me to that fine line between coach and dad. My wife reminds me in the stands before every game, now remember, you're his dad, not his coach. And my little guy, he's playing a lot now, so we have, it's nice to see him love the game. And coaching's hard, man. You follow coaches, but nothing's as hard as being a parent or as rewarding as being a parent. So that's something that I've learned to really enjoy over the years.
Coach, appreciate your time today. Hope you have a great upcoming season.
Well, I appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing because you're doing a great job and you're a great follow on social media.
And we want to once again thank Coach Brown for taking the time to join us. It was a really fun chat. I think it's a lot of fun for me just doing these interviews to have coaches really be engaged and really seem like they're enjoying the conversation. I think Will was having a lot of fun. We were chatting for 27 or so minutes, and I think he probably could have gone for another hour. I don't know if I could have, but I certainly think he could have.
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of great insights, especially from the recent foreign trip where they went to Canada, and he said they played 5 games in 5 days, and kind of the logistics and like the thought process behind that, and kind of how they approached the trip. I thought, I found that all very interesting because on one hand, you could say, we're returning all these guys. We have a chance to be a lot better this year. Let me try to play my best 7 or 8 guys like I would in like a high leverage game. Try to kind of develop that cohesiveness as much as I can now. Try to get a head start on that and play these really good teams like a Carleton, and kind of reap those rewards, but it seems like he went the other direction where it's kind of like, we should bond as a team, and everyone's going to get a chance to kind of show where they stand for when the regular season runs around. Two different thought processes there. It seems like he likes the kind of spread the love on the foreign trip more.
Well, I think the challenge really is there's not going to be enough minutes for everyone, and you want to get everybody a chance to play, and not only a chance to play, but a chance to really find the lineups that work, right? Because he mentioned starting 5 freshmen down the stretch last season. So you've got those 5 guys you all think can play at some point, or at least contribute at this level. You bring in 3 D1 transfers in Romani Hansen from Savannah State, JoJo Anderson from Nevada, and Sam Schaefer from Southern Illinois. So those are 3 guys who probably can give you rotation minutes. You return Ahmad Clark, who came off the bench down the stretch, but might be your best player. He's 15 points, 5 assists guy, can really get a bucket. He's very skilled, struggles to shoot the ball, but can really do pretty much everything else. You've got 2 good freshmen in Trey Hutchison and Mitch Doherty. Mitch Doherty's a really good recruit for them. I think he'll have a nice career. Maybe it's down the line, or maybe it's this year, but he kind of reminds me of that Sam Rowley type, physical 4-man who can maybe step out and shoot a little bit, but also bring that toughness. So you got a lot of newcomers who can contribute to a returning core that's pretty much running it back. So going on a trip like this, I think really gives you an opportunity to say, okay, what are some of these lineups that work best? Are we going to play Clark back in the starting rotation, or is he going to be that 6th man? I guess he probably starts. Where does Anderson work in there? I've heard really good things about how he played on the international trip. D'Souza is a guy they really like in that program. So, just trying to find the rotations and work stuff out. I think there's no better way than playing a lot of basketball. And so it was really interesting to hear his philosophy on it. But, they're playing all these games, but also trying to have fun and not take it too seriously. So definitely a very interesting thought process there on the international trip. One of the things I was most fascinated by.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited for this team too. Cameron Healy, their leading scorer from last year. Coach Brown's was saying that he's one of the best shooters in the country. I mean, he hit 104 3-pointers last year. That's Isaiah Joe territory. Who we touched on a few weeks ago, the talented 2-guard for Arkansas. So with all these guys coming back and then these transfers coming in, and some of these guys had a lot of success last year, like a Cameron Healy. Only going to be better now with more experience and another year of a cohesion together as a team. Where do you think Albany stands in terms of America East right now? So clearly behind Vermont at 1 with Lamb and Giddens and the Duncans and everything, but could they push for a second there?
Yeah, I've been penciled in it too. I've been writing my previews. I've gotten started on those, which is why you haven't seen a lot of content on my website recently, as I've just been kind of logging some previews in the backlog. But obviously Vermont's the favorite. Lamb is the best player in the league. Will admitted that he's so good. But I think UAlbany has to be right there too, because UMBC, loses a couple of guys, especially Joe Sherburne, who was really important to what they did. KJ Jackson's kind of an inefficient point guard. I don't love that. Stony Brook loses their head coach, and they lose Akwasi Yeboah. The door is definitely open, right? Hartford loses everything. UMass Lowell, has to prove it. I think they've got a nice little duo with Christian Lutetti and Obadiah Noel, but they've got, in my mind, Albany has the second best roster and one of the better coaches in the conference. So to me, I think penciling them in at second is right on. I think they can push for 20 wins if things break right. And, kind of looking at their schedule, they've got a chance to win some games, but they've got this young core, and you have to remember, Healy was a freshman, but another guy that was a freshman was Adam Luka. How many big guys, obviously a redshirt freshman, can give you 9 and 6 fairly efficiently as a freshman? Luka is a guy who I'm pretty excited about seeing his development. I think he'll be an all-league guy down the line. So they've got a nice little young duo. They've got a experienced point guard in Clark to run the show. They've got experience from guys who played a lot more than they might have as freshmen otherwise last year. They get some transfers to kind of buoy everything. I think they're in really, really good shape.
In the America East as a whole, it's a league of the haves and the have-nots, where usually you have your Vermont, Stony Brook, Albany at the top, and then we've had UMBC recently. Before that, we had New Hampshire, and then there's a huge gap from those teams where most years recently, two of those teams have been top 100, right? Stony Brook with Jamil Warney and then these Vermont teams. And then the whole bottom half is all, sub 250, some of the worst teams in Division One. So that kind of gap really helps the programs like Albany, Stony Brook, and Vermont with their ability to, kind of rebuild on the fly and kind of attract a certain caliber of player where that you have a very good shot at making the NCAA tournament every year, even in a down year. It just takes an upset or two in a conference tournament because these Maine, Binghamton, Hartford. I mean, they've just been dormant for much of the recent basketball history.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that has always separated the America East from some of the other mid-major leagues in the Northeast, because you look at it, you've got the NEC, the MAC, the Patriot League, the CAA. I think the pecking order has generally been seen as CAA number one, then the MAC and the Patriot League at 2 and 3, the America East at 4, and the NEC at 5. And the difference has not been the top. And obviously things change every year. Weaknesses and strengths grow and come and go. Obviously the MAC had a horrible year this past year, but the weakness has never been at the top. When I'd compare the MAC to the America East, just because of the Albany-Siena comparison, like the top of that league was just as good, if not better than the MAC, right? Like Vermont or Stony Brook with Warney and Steve Peichel and Purifoy, or the Albany teams that three-peated. Like those teams were just as good, if not better, than the best team in the MAC those years. It was the problem was the 8th and the 9th best teams in the MAC were clearly better than Maine or Hartford or Binghamton, as you mentioned. So when you have these cellar dwellers, it kind of sinks everything for a league. And that's not to say that all of a sudden if Maine and Hartford got good, they would start getting at-large bids. But that can be the difference between a 15 or a 16 seed and a 13 or a 14 seed. And Vermont had an amazing year last year. They still get a 13 and get Florida State in the first round. It's tough for Vermont to jump to the 12 line and have a chance to pull that upset. Hopefully they get that shot this year. But Albany drew the Buddy Hield Oklahoma team in the NCAA tournament. They drew the Duke Seth Curry team in the NCAA tournament.
But a league that is structured like the America East, is super beneficial for those top teams, because I heard or I saw on Twitter people talking about this a few months ago about Mercer, where they were in the Atlantic Sun and they were such a good program, and the bottom was so weak that they could always contend for an NCAA tournament. Maybe they get a 15 seed, but they moved to a stronger conference where maybe their upside is to get a 12 or a 13 seed in the SoCon, but they don't have the same opportunities to win the league, right? So they really decreased their probability of winning the at-large. Winning the auto bid in a league that doesn't give out many at-larges at all. We're talking, once in a blue moon, which was last year, where they, got one, or they had the upside to get one or two last year. Ended up only being a one-bid league. But, there is a lot of value for a team like Mercer, or now I guess in the ASUN it's Liberty now, or like Vermont in the America East, where your kind of field of possible contenders is so narrow that even if you're a top 100 program and everybody else is in the 250s, that still works for you.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I think that's definitely a valid point. And in a rebuild year when you're starting 5 freshmen for Albany to still go 7-9, I think obviously speaks to Will's job and the job he did running that program and getting them competitive by the end of the year. But it also kind of speaks to the weakness at the bottom of the league, right? They were still right there in the top 5 and kind of hung around. They just couldn't quite get it done. So I think that's always one of the really interesting things to monitor is just how the dynamics work in every conference. And you don't really learn about those dynamics until you really follow it for a couple of years, and then you realize, okay, these are because we know that Vermont's there every year. We don't necessarily know though that Maine is never there. So I think that's always an interesting thing to kind of study and look at, and I think that's something that kind of uniquely positions Albany.
Absolutely. Anything else? It was a interesting throwback. I totally forgot that Northeastern was part of the America East. So when Coach Brown was talking about playing against Jose Barea, I was like, wait, played at Northeastern. But they are a former America East school. I think they switched to the CAA in 2005 or 2006.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many good ones come through that league, though. I mean, Barea, you mentioned, the Vermont duo, Koppenrath and Sorrentine, that hurt him a lot as a young coach who just got their numbers retired at Vermont. But also, you think about guys at Vermont, obviously the Duncan brothers, but Anthony Lamb was a superstar. They've had big men before that. It seems like there's always a good big man at Vermont. Jameel Warney and Carson Purifoy at Stony Brook. There have been some really good ones to come through this league. So always fun to get the perspective of a guy who's been there for such a long time. I thought his comments about the game changing in terms of spacing were not unexpected, but noteworthy nonetheless. I thought the idea that now you're recruiting more of a 3-man to play the 4 instead of a true 4-man who's going to bruise you. So that's obviously something to watch. And he's had those bruising 4-men throughout his career. I mentioned Sam Rowley earlier. He's the guy I remember just because he was on that. My favorite Albany team of all time was that one that Peter Hooley was on in 2015, where they hit the buzzer beater off the tip rebound and then stormed the court. And then that was just a peak March moment. But Rowley was on that team. He's kind of a physical guy, one of the Australian imports that Will's had so much success with. So definitely a lot of good stuff from the chat overall, and we hope you enjoyed. So that'll do it for this week's episode of the podcast. We will have deep dives coming up soon as well as we continue our previews of the 2019-20 season. It's getting closer, everyone. Stay tuned with us. Lots of fun stuff upcoming. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe. Please rate us. Give us a review. Tell your friends. We do appreciate it. It is always helpful for us to have more people listening to the show. So once again, thanks to Coach Brown. Thanks if you're a new listener for joining us. This has been the CBB Central Podcast. Have a good one.